Hi, it's Penny here. Welcome to another reading vlog. This week, I've been promised terrible weather. I have my doubts, but if it delivers, hopefully we can read a lot. Or if it doesn't, maybe we can enjoy better weather. Either way, should be okay, right? So, the books that I'm wanting to read. I actually have already started Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan, and I'd really like to make better progress on it. Last week, I just wasn't getting to my ebook time much, but this week, maybe we'll do better. So this is the 5th book, I think, in the Legends of the First Empire. I can never remember the name of this series. And it's a 6-book series, so I'm nearly at the end. Basically, it's set in a world where we have the Frey, who are basically elf-type people, and the humans, who are fairly primitive in their technology, have always viewed the Frey as godlike beings, and they think they can't die until a human accidentally kills an elf or a Frey, and that kind of sets a bigger conflict in motion. So obviously at 5th book, things have come a long way. At this point, we actually have some characters in like the Afterlife trying to achieve something. We're learning a lot about the gods and the mythology of the world, which I'm interested in, but I can't decide if the book is going too slow with it, or if it's just because I'm reading the book very slow that it feels like it's going slow, which is why I'd like to try and give it a bit more attention. So we'll see whether I actually manage that, because the other thing I want to read this week is actually quite long. It's a 500-page book, and the font is relatively small. You probably can't see, but it's pretty small, which is concerning. But also, this is a 5-star prediction for me. I'm hoping to really love it. And I actually just sat down and reread like the prologue in the first chapter, which I had read previously in like a try a chapter video. And I had forgotten how cool that little prologue is. It's kind of written from the perspective of some kind of like non-human entity. And there's definitely a hint of like AI or machines going on in there. But the end of that little prologue basically says, nobody had ever attempted before to perform surgery on entire universes. For such a task, you need a knife of immense, all but incalculable size. Me, I am that knife. And then the next chapter, we're following this scientist who's like so obsessed with her work that even as the apocalypse kind of is happening around her, she's basically just living in her office trying to continue her work. And I believe the direction this book is going to go in is some kind of like multiverse war. I don't really know, but I love the writing. I love Carey. I've loved a lot of his stuff, so I have a lot of hope for this, and I'm super excited to be trying to get through this. But obviously 500 pages is a lot, so we'll see how we go. But I am also reading this as part of the Magical Readathon. I feel like in my vlogs I should be giving more details about like what prompts I'm reading what books for, but honestly, I'm not that organized. But I think this is the last kind of physical book that I need for my Magical Readathon prompts. So as long as I get through this by the end of the month, we're fine for that. And it's only the 18th, so we've got 12 more days, and I should definitely be able to finish it in that time, especially if I end up loving it. I'm sure I'll fly through it if I'm loving it. As well, of course, I do have an audiobook. I just started on my last run. What's it called? Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. It's only 4 hours left. Wait, don't play it now. Oh, that's a lie. 4 hours of actual listening time left because I'm listening at 2 times speed and it's only a 10-hour audiobook. So this, well, I don't really know what this is about, but it's something about a drug that companies have been giving to their employees that like kind of makes them addicted to work or like enjoy work. But for some people, it's too addictive and they're kind of managing that. However, there's also this other woman that we're following who like steals patented medications or like, you know, reverse engineers them and then sells them on the black market or gives them to certain people for free. And she's using this work addiction drug is basically funding for her other more ethical endeavors. But it seems like the side effects of this without proper medical care can be quite extreme, which she's just learned about, and she's kind of trying to track down what's really going on with that. As well, we're getting the perspective of this robot who works for the company that created these drugs. And he's been paired with this human and basically sent out to infiltrate these drug stealers to try and work out, like to try and stop it. His perspective is weird. I don't know how I feel about him yet. But also, at the moment, all he's really doing is observing this human that he's with, talking to all these university students. And it's a lot of just like, I don't know, characters that I feel like I'm supposed to care about, but I, as yet, don't. But I'm only a couple of hours into the audiobook. out of 10. Does that mean I think I'm like 15% of the way in, so I'm not far in. Also, I started listening to it right after I was listening to Assassin of Reality last week, which is one of my favorite books or one of my favorite series. So I felt like that started me off like relatively. It's never going to be as good. So I kind of need to like reframe where I'm at so that I can enjoy it, even though I know relatively it will never be as good as one of my favorites. And then I think as well for this week, I have a few graphic novels floating around, but I guess we'll just see what happens.
Meet me on the lake, meet me in dark places, meet me like the wind meets the rain, meet me on the lake.
Hello, so I'm filming on my phone instead of my DJI Osmo because I find that trying to film with like a camera that's obviously a camera in public is much more embarrassing than just filming on my phone. Even though the other camera is better quality, it looks like I could be having a video call, right? Although it's definitely also harder to hold it up, but maybe I need the arm workout. Anyway, I just returned a book to the library, and while I was on my running here, I have been listening to Autonomous. To be honest, I have a bunch of problems with it. I think the core problem is I don't like the audiobook narrator. It's this particular kind of narration that's really flat. Like, I don't like audiobook narrators where they're too over the top, unless it suits the book or unless they're doing a particularly good job of it. But for this kind of story, I'd be annoyed if it was too over the top, but I'm also annoyed about it being too flat. Because I think the way that it's written, I'm already struggling to feel connected and get invested in the characters' emotional stories. And the flat delivery really doesn't help with that. So even though I really like the plot that's going on, I'm leaning my elbow on my knee now because my arm's getting too tired. Even though I kind of like the plot about what's going on with these drugs and the whole, I guess, activism towards patent law story, the characters' individual stories is also getting a lot of attention, and I'm just not that interested in them. Probably the most interesting is the bot Paladin. He, though, is having some kind of weird sexual thing going on with his partner. Not really, though. It's kind of like something weird happened that I am like totally against for many reasons, and it better turn out to be that this guy is not a good guy, because what he did was not good, in my opinion, for a lot of reasons. But it's really confused. The sexual thing that kind of happened has really confused the bot, and he's trying to work it out. There were some bits I really enjoyed with that, like where he's still trying to put some of his brain power aside to work that out while they're in the middle of these like life and death kind of situations. Some of it definitely made me laugh, but it's only those bits that I'm really enjoying. Or also, I'm finding that I'm very confused about the age of all the characters in this book, because the main character, Jack, suddenly said something about having worked at a lab like decades ago, and I was like, I did not even think you were decades old. So, but also, continuing the weird sexual things going on, I think they were having sex with this young 20-year-old that's been staying with them that used to be a slave, and I'm 100% against that as well. So mixed feelings about that for sure. And I just think as well that the world building isn't like really buying me into the sci-fi side of things. Whereas if I compare it to Infinity Gate, which I read about 60 pages of last night, oh, it's so great. I love it. Like, it's very sciencey, and most of it goes over my head. But what I do understand, I'm enjoying. Like, it's a lot of problem solving, maybe sort of similar to like Andy Weir's style, except maybe less fun. There's kind of like a darker, more sinister tone to things. Still sometimes some light-hearted things, but like I know it's set in the apocalypse and I know things are gonna go very wrong. Wow, that plane is loud. Where is it? Oh, up there. If I was on my DJI Osmo, I could flip you around to see that. Like, I think it must be some kind of classic old warplane or something to be that loud. Oh, and there's another one over there. You know, I did see some people when I was running along the river. I did see some people gathering down there. Maybe this is some kind of event happening. Anyway, in Infinity Gate, basically we're mainly following this scientist, and it's like, oh, now we've got Ding Dong. Anyway, Basically, this young woman is like addicted to, not in an autonomous kind of way, but she's addicted to like studying at this university where she's got a job. She's been studying dark matter, but the apocalypse is kind of happening around her, so everybody else is kind of disappearing and going off to do different things, but she's just staying at work, living there. Eventually she kind of pulls in the AI system that somebody was working on to help her out because there's nobody else for her to work with or talk to, but she does figure out how to travel to other multiverses. And unfortunately, one of the ones she accidentally goes to is part of the Pandemonium. And so far that's been okay because they just realized, oh, that's probably a mistake. Doesn't look like they were intentionally invading our space. We'll just ignore it for now. But I feel like it's going to lead to some consequences later. But I'm really enjoying the problem solving. Sorry, I'm swapping hands. I'm really enjoying her problem solving and her working out how this multiverse stuff is working. So she's basically got to the point where no one will believe her about this multiverse stuff, even though she's like, this could solve all our problems, but no one will believe her. So she's just decided to go to another multiverse herself. So I guess when I read some more, I'll find out what happens next. I'm super excited to do it. So that should help with like motivating me to find some reading time. Hello, so we're filming in dappley tree light today, and there's also many clouds, but anyway, I have made some progress on both of these, and actually, I guess also I did make some more progress on Autonomous on my way home from my run the other day. I've only got a couple of hours of listening time left on that, because I'm like 2/3 of the way through. To be honest though, I can't quite think about what happened since I last talked to you. I think mostly it's still a lot of the same. What I'm probably struggling with the most is that we keep having these different social groups that the different characters are involved in, and I just don't know whether I'm supposed to care about any of these like minor characters at all, and there's just too many of them. I don't care. I'm struggling to care about the major characters, so I definitely don't care about the minor characters. And I'm feeling very iffy about the ethics of everybody involved, and I'm sure that the point of the book is to think about and discuss these ethics. But maybe I like things to be like clearer. I don't know. I think it's also the YA feel of this, and I don't even know what I'm saying when I say a YA feel. I think it is, though, the focus on the, like, social groups. Maybe it's not necessarily YA. It could also be, like, new adults. I don't know. I guess another part of this is it does feel very American focused in that a lot of the prejudices are not that they're the kind of things like homophobia is in there, and it's not that that doesn't exist outside of America, but I feel like it's being framed in a particular kind of an American way. I don't know how to describe that, but I almost feel like there's this cool thing going on with these drugs that are addicting people to work, and we're not really getting into that because it seems like the story, a lot of it is more about these robots who are autonomous, but then that part of the story is not getting enough focus either, and I almost wish this book had chosen one of those topics to deal with rather than trying to deal with both of them at the same time, even though of course there are some parallels because these people who are addicted to work in a lot of ways are very similar to these robots who their whole desire system is set up around wanting to do their work. Anyway, I guess the thing is I'm not particularly enjoying this, but I do think it has some interesting topics, but because I'm not enjoying it, I'm not sure that I'm really engaging with those topics as well as I should. Anyway, other things. Age of Death. I don't know what is happening with the light here. Whatever. Age of Death. This, I'm now, I think, just short of halfway, so I'm still making fairly short progress. I'm trying to position myself so that that's less ridiculous. I'm really liking some of it, but I actually think the stuff that I thought I would like the most, the stuff about the afterlife and learning about the gods, that's not what I'm enjoying the most, because I just feel like some of this afterlife stuff doesn't entirely make sense. And also, I'm frustrated that we're learning about the gods of the world so slowly, although I do like the little mystery that's been set up around whether certain people are good or bad. But I'm actually most liking the bit where there's this one human who's kind of a prisoner of the elves, and their interactions, their discussion is quite interesting. I think I like seeing those two different cultures come together and see them try to come to some kind of resolution. Anyway, I think the summary of this is still that I need to start getting through it quicker at some point. Then as well, I haven't read that much more of Infinity Gate. I think like another 50 pages. I do think the structure of this is going to be a little bit like the last thing I read by Emma Carey, which was Once Was Willem, where it's like multi-perspective, but it's not that we're flipping back and forth between different characters. It's like we spend a lot of time with the scientist and now we've moved on to another character, and I wonder if next we're going to move on to another character, because that's what Once Was Willem did. It just kind of kept moving. You know, you get like 50 pages of a certain character and then 50 pages of another, and then maybe you don't even ever come back to those original characters, but you see them through the eyes of others, which, to be honest, isn't my favorite structure, but so far I'm not minding it, and I don't actually know. Maybe this book won't do that, but that's the feeling I'm getting. So the second character that we got introduced, actually the way we met him felt very Joe Abercrombie to me. I think I tabbed a couple of lines. It's like, Essien was in the habit of counting his blessings on a regular basis. The flood of self-pity and self-indignation that was released when he got to the end of the count and tallied the big zero was very satisfying. Then he started in on the other list, the list of all the shit he had to climb over if he ever expected to have a life. And then later it's like, Essien grew up fast, since the alternative was not to grow up at all. It's just kind of like, I don't know if those lines are the best lines that capture it, but they're kind of like, this is shit, but we're not getting too serious about it. So Essien is this young boy also living in Africa, like our original scientist. However, I will say, I kind of assumed our scientist was in our world with the whole like climate crisis, apocalypse, wars, all that kind of thing. But then, now that we're in Essien's perspective, he was talking about the Destroyer movies, which it became clear were the Terminator movies, and he was talking about Alois A. Schwarzenegger. And I did look it up. Alois is Arnie Schwarzenegger's middle name. So basically, this is a multiverse where Schwarzenegger is named something different and the Terminator movies are named something different. And then I realized, well, I can't assume that the scientist is in our world either. It could be something just very close, but with slight differences. So these kind of multiverse books, you do need to be careful about assumptions. So Essien basically is living in poverty, just getting by, selling himself for sex, getting into all sorts of like slave labor kind of situations, just having a pretty struggle bus life. And then he meets up with our scientist. And she, I think, is going to show him some secrets of the multiverse. And I'm very excited to get into that. I feel like every time I read a bit of this, I'm like very excited to get into the next bit. And then I keep doing other things. But hopefully we can find some more reading time. Although I'm trying to film a bunch of videos today, so we'll see. Anyway, I guess my summary is loving this, not minding this, but hoping that it improves. And then Autonomous, I'm feeling pretty meh about it. But hopefully this will stay good. This will get better. I don't know about Autonomous. We'll see. Okay, so I went on a run and I finished off Autonomous, and unfortunately, I think I hated it. There were a lot of things that I felt like were being set up throughout the book, and I assumed that it was setting up things so that then we could later learn something about it and realize that it was not good. And then a lot of those things were never really properly called out, and so then, like, what the fuck was that? The thing that makes me the most annoyed, so we have this robot paladin who works for the, I actually thought it was for the company, but it's actually the IPC, which I don't know what that stands for, but whatever. So he's working for this company and he's programmed to want to be loyal and to meet the desires of his partner. And also relevant is the fact that this robot is really only a couple of months old, so essentially a child. And then his partner does this like gross thing where he's like turned on by this robot's guns and is basically masturbating over him or something. And it's gross. And then it moves on to like further sexual things, which are 100% non-consensual. It tries to pretend it is, but it isn't. And I kept waiting for this to turn out that this guy was not a good guy. And instead, it kind of went and told us his backstory and tried to make him like more likable, but in a way that actually convinced me the opposite, because there was another robot that he was supposed to be helping out, but instead became sexually attracted to it. And what was that? I hated it. And then, this is slight spoilers, I guess, so if you really want to read this book, skip this bit. However, I can't say I would recommend this book, but basically, Paladin manages to get some kind of autonomy, so he's able to make his own decisions. So at that point, I think now Paladin can see that his programming has led him to do this, and he's got a lot of more information, so he should be able to see the truth of things. But instead, he chooses to be with this guy romantically, and it's like some kind of happily ever after relationship. Even though, like, it's quite clear that this guy, this human guy, 100% doesn't understand anything about this robot. Like, what was that even trying to say? And then on the other side of things, we have this pharmaceutical pirate, and she ends up taking on this human slave, like, who has been forced to give people sex. And she's in a position where he's completely dependent. Why is my boyfriend drilling? He's in a position where he's completely dependent on her for his survival. And so there's a complete power imbalance there. And so when they start having sex, even though she's apparently a much older woman, although every character feels like they have a similar voice, no one feels like their own person, maybe except Paladin. So, like, that's not even talked about at all. Completely inappropriate. And then we have the whole kind of main setup of the story is about this pharmaceutical piracy and all of that. And nothing really interesting ever happens with that. And I feel like the actual point of the book was it was trying to compare slavery with these robots not having autonomy. It's now really rainy, so I don't know if that's ruining the sound for you, but whatever. This is life. Yeah, it was trying to compare slavery with these robots and their lack of or their gaining of autonomy. And that's an interesting setup, but I just didn't feel like it ever did anything interesting with that. Like, it didn't know what it was trying to say about it and what it was saying. I guess I 100% disagree with. So just overall, a very disappointing read. I went online. When I was reading this until the very ending, completely disappointed me. I was thinking 3-star read, like, it's okay, but nothing amazing. Then that very ending, I was thinking, well, it has to be a 2-star read. Then I went and read some other people's 1-star and 2-star reviews, and I feel like I was being talked down even lower. I need to look at actually, I have it here, don't I? My rating scale, relative rating scale thingy. I think I have to give it 1.5 stars, actually. Yeah, that was really disappointing. So, anyway, luckily, I do have some other things that I'm reading. So, Infinity Gate. I am really loving this. Although, I don't know, is it quite 5-star material? Maybe. I kind of wish, though, that we'd just been following that main scientist all the way through. Like, I understand why we're not, but it kind of has taken away the emotional impact of the story because it's really like a lot of world building. And the world that it is building is amazing and really interesting. And so I'm there, and the writing is great. But I just wish we were following certain characters a little bit more. Because basically, after the last time I talked to you, there was a chapter where Essien, this very disadvantaged guy, made some terrible decisions. And ever since then, everything's been going very badly for everyone. The Pandemonium as well has come across these machine-run worlds, and that's kind of led to a lot of troubles. This one I will be more careful with not spoiling, because this one I think I will recommend. But probably only if you're looking for a particular kind of story. I guess we'll see. So I'm just short of halfway, I think, and I'm going to try and finish this since it's rainy, as I mentioned, and it's going to be rainy, I think, today and tomorrow, as well as I'm also going to be bleeding to death because I'm a girl. So I think that seems like the perfect time to just sit down and blast through this. I think I just really love the tone of the writing and the world building, the expansive world, and some of the twisted ideas. So definitely, I'm going to try and focus on reading this. I have also made a tiny bit of progress on Age of Death. I still think it would be better if I could read it more. Also, what I found this morning, I read 2 chapters, and I've realized that the stuff in the underworld or the afterlife, I'm not loving as much because it just doesn't quite feel very cohesive or like it's making much sense. Maybe there's just a little bit too much mystery for me, but I am really liking the other plot line where we have this human kind of with the Frey or the elf people and they're kind of trying to achieve some kind of peace, but it's like quite a big culture clash. And there is also an element in that of the magic of the world. I mean, obviously there's magic in the afterlife too, but I think I like it better in the constraints of the real world. So I'm surprised because I thought I was really going to like the afterlife part of this book, but I'm actually really liking the other part. So once again, I don't know if I'll finish this by the end of the vlog, but we'll see, because I would like to do a lot of reading if I can manage it. Okay, since I last talked to you, we've had a couple of rainy days and I actually managed to finish Infinity Gate. I did keep thinking I should stop and update you, and then I would think, I don't know that I actually have that much to say. I definitely didn't think the second half of this was as strong as the first part, and partly that's that the character stories aren't as good. For a lot of the second part, we're either following this like rabbit girl who's ended up becoming involved with this like, can't spoil it, ended up becoming involved with this like machine hegemony, they're calling it. So there's this other machine civilization. She's kind of accidentally become involved in that, which kind of leads to some quite extreme events. We're also getting the perspective of some different people in this Pan-Dominion military as they deal with this bigger war with this like robot civilization that they've come up against. And it kind of escalates, but the pacing is quite weird. Like there's a big action scene, but the action seems to take like forever. And a lot of the like really great lines and like the thoughts about humanity and what makes us human and our own view of ourselves, like versus other kinds of humanity, or also versus robots or AI, was really interesting. And then the second half, like I have still tabbed a few things, but there wasn't as much that I was really loving. Still, I think it has set up interestingly for the second book. I'm not sure. I think I saw Books with Brittany say she loved this and then she hated the second book, but the second book does have really high ratings, so I guess we'll see whether the second book is better or not for me. But this one, I don't think I'm going to be quite giving it 5 stars. I think it might be 4 stars. Like, a lot to love in here still, but I think it just had some pacing problems near the end. But I still loved it. Like, it still had so much to say. Like, if I compared this and everything it had to say about slavery and autonomy and AI and robots, like everything this had to say about civilization was so much more interesting than anything I felt that Autonomous had to say. And as well, Age of Death, I think I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I'm going to finish this off in my next vlog. I feel like this has taken me all month to read, and I'm not sure why that is, because it's not even that long a book. I think it's more about me not finding time to read it because I was trying to read it as an ebook, and then I've just been sleeping or playing on my phone instead of reading ebooks, which maybe I need to try and sort out next week. I have also started another audiobook while I did some housework this morning. Actually an Emma Carey audiobook, Full Side, but I guess since I'm kind of wrapping this vlog up, I will save that for my next reading vlog along with this one. And I'm also hoping to get to this, but we will see over in the next vlog. But do let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.